Go.
Hold.
What?
All right, and
welcome back to the After 29 podcast. This is Mazia Boone in the building, episode 6, epidural.
epidural. What the hell are you thinking about over here?
Oh man, come on, bro.
That's that miracle drug, man.
Epidural?
You about to have another baby, bro?
Nah, man. Keep that on your side of the table,
Right?
I'm good over here.
All right.
Gotta spread the love.
All right, y'all ready?
Yeah. Welcome back to the After 29 podcast. This is Mazia Boone in the building, episode 6, Redlining. I'm Malcolm Davis, two-time homeowner.
Hey, I'm Clayton Foster. Just had a birthday, feeling good, ready to get this thing going.
And it's Minister V, just ready to get this thing started, y'all. All right, bow your heads, guys. Eternal Father, we come to you on this Friday night, Lord, once again, just to say thank you first and foremost, Lord. Lord, we thank you for today. We thank you for last night's rest. We thank you for the rising of this morning, Lord. We thank you for the many blessings, Lord, that you've bestowed upon us, Lord. Lord, we ask that you will bless this podcast, Lord. Bless our friendship, bless this brotherhood, Lord. And we just ask that you will touch and bless everything that comes out of our mouths, Lord. Let it be pleasing unto your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the After 29 podcast.
Oh, yeah. Today,
we dive in on episode 6 about redlining and how it affected the black community. As we know, redlining was just another or a transformation of slavery because they just changed it into a whole nother way. You know, they found another way to get at us. So we're not going to hesitate. We're going to jump right in here because this is a very, very important topic. Even though it was something that was done years and years ago, we are still feeling the effects of it.
Sir.
So I'm gonna bounce this over here to Malcolm and let Malcolm, tell the people what redlining is, Malcolm.
So redlining. So I'm gonna go ahead and read you guys a definition, and then I'm gonna tell you what redlining is. Redlining is a discriminatory practice that puts services out of reach of residents of certain areas based on race or ethnicity. It can be seen in the systematic denial of mortgages, insurance, loans, and other financial services based on location, rather than on an individual qualifications or credit. Notably, the policies of redlining is felt by most residents of minority neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So in essence, what this is saying is that banks and other federal institutions actually took out a map and drew red lines around minority areas and kind of didn't loan to guys.
Not kinda. They did.
They didn't loan to us, also in insurance purposes as well. And even if they did get loans, they kind of gave us high interest rates and those things, and that contributed to a lot of the wealth gap that's going on in America today.
Yeah. So as we bounce into a little bit of the history of redlining, as Malcolm just told us what redlining is, redlining was a practice that was pretty much put into place by the U.S. government.
Yep.
This wasn't like a militia group or like a KKK or anything like that. You know, one of those terrorist organizations.
Yep.
This was put into place by our own government back around what was about the 1930s, I believe.
1930s, yes.
FDR.
By President FDR. Mm-hmm. I think it was 1934 when it was official. It was an official practice of the United States, and this particular practice led to pretty much a formal segregation here in America. I mean, there was already segregation, but this was more like an official. I mean, because this was a law that was put into place and put into practice. So
this practice was meant to keep the black men poor and to keep all communities separated and segregated.
It worked.
And it worked, and it's still working today.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it. 1934, they put this practice into place. And then when you really look at the numbers, 1934, that's only roughly 70 years after the abolishment of slavery. We're talking about less than 100 years. They abolished slavery, President Lincoln, and then, like I said, less than 70 years later, now they have a whole new practice of pretty much holding minority families down, especially black families, because, I mean, let's just face it, they didn't want slavery to end, and because of that, it just transformed, in a whole new way. And it wasn't until the Fair House
1968.
1968. The Fair Housing Act was passed.
Yep.
And that was the official end to redlining. But we know
It didn't end.
it didn't end. And like I said, we weren't even born back then, and even us, we're still feeling the effects of that,
Oh, yeah.
of redlining. So it just goes to show you, man, that like, things have a lasting effect. If you don't take care of them now, like if we don't battle and fight some of these discriminatory practices like right now, our grandkids and our great grandkids are going to feel the effects of this. So it's up to us, and I'm not just saying us as blacks, but it's up to us as a nation to put these practices to rest.
We got to get rid of, man. We got to put people in office that's going to force our agenda as well.
Yeah, and I agree, like with what Malcolm's saying, but I think it goes further than that, because just looking at researching redlining, the Fair Housing Act took place, but it's more action that needs to be required behind that, because the laws can change, but our actions as a community need to change along with that to really have those, that those laws and things, when they pass, they're not going to be effective if we don't change our actions too.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, not just our actions, but our attitudes, because that's where a lot of it, that's really where a lot of it is, why it's still happening today. Because, okay, so you wrote a law so-called banning redlining and, and those discriminatory practices as far as like lending, and things like that in black communities. But you still have a lot of people in power, whether it's banks and different, different financial systems, they still have the same mindset. So, and there's really, there's really no way to really enforce, banning those type of practices, because if you have a loan officer who is,
Yeah, that's true. And that's why we got to get back to black banks. We got to put our money in black banks, and we got to put our money in credit unions and those things. If the big banks won't finance you, find another bank that will.
Yeah,
that's definitely what we have to do.
Yeah, most definitely. And we all see it, whether you're black or not. We all see it. You can try to be blind to the fact, but the evidence is there.
Yep.
The evidence is there. So let's talk about the lasting effects of redlining. And we know, okay, so it was, this was something that was started 80 plus years ago.
Yep.
It was outlawed maybe what is it, 52 years ago at this point, I believe, 52 years ago. But we're still feeling the effects of it. It's evident in every neighborhood, in every city, every state that you go to. Let's talk about those lasting effects of redlining.
So with redlining is that even if you could have good credit living in these areas, and the banks wouldn't give you a personal loan, they wouldn't give you a mortgage, they wouldn't give you a business loan or any of those things, just because you lived in this area of it. And even insurance companies wouldn't even insure your property that you had, so that left you open to get sued and your properties taken from you as well. And even if you want to go to another point as well, is that grocery stores and retail businesses would not come to your community, so you had to go elsewhere to get those things. So we still feel the effects, and we're gonna hit on wealth in a little bit later in here, that we're gonna talk about the wealth gap, and the fastest way to build wealth is through property and home ownership.
And the crazy thing about it is, not only could not get loans and things to buy homes in your own community, there's other communities where you were barred from even living at if you were of minority descent, like with William Levitt with Levittown, New York. He specifically said anyone of black people, any minorities, don't sell to them.
Yeah. And another one of those, lasting effects, as we travel around, like now, like, if you're not really schooled on what redlining is and that practice from back then, you drive around certain areas and I hate to say it, but you can almost tell when you're in a black neighborhood or a black area, because the conditions of the overall neighborhoods are poor.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see a lot of businesses there. And when you do see a lot of businesses, and I think we touched on this before, in a black neighborhood, 1 in 20 businesses are owned by blacks, and it may be less than that. We don't own anything in those neighborhoods. there's no type of resources invested in these neighborhoods,
Right.
you know, which was part of that practice 80 years ago. But like I said, 80 years later, now, today, it's still so evident.
Yeah.
The conditions are terrible, you know, and I mean, and even the cities don't invest in these areas.
Yeah.
Drive through one of, you know, in any state, I don't, you know, whoever's listening, drive through one of the neighborhoods or the areas in your state, and you can tell the difference between a more affluent neighborhood. The roads are great, schools, the landscaping is, you know, all nice like that. Go to one of these previously red lines, or I still say still red line areas, you know, I mean, the conditions are just poor. The roads are terrible. The landscape looks like trash everywhere, you know. So
even the things that are available, like, you know, in neighborhoods like that, you just see like trash fast food restaurants. You don't see no like nice grocery stores or anything like that. It's just, and it's like a food desert. You can't get no like healthy food. It's just trash around there.
Yeah. And you paying more for the items that you can buy in your neighborhood as well.
Yeah. And I think that's another one of those. I mean, call me a conspiracy theorist, but to me, I think it's purpose. I think it's done on purpose. You know, we're going to come into these, you know, already poor neighborhoods anyway. We're going to charge them these high prices. Most of them don't have cars. You know, they don't really have access to public transportation and things like that. So we're going to come in their neighborhoods. We're going to jack the prices up. They have to have it because they can't get anywhere else. Yep. And it keeps them from moving forward because they can't afford to. So, you know, we're going to do that. And we're not going to really give them jobs. Well, we're going to make them come work for us because they don't own anything in the neighborhoods anyway. So.
And one thing that blew my mind when I was researching was how, you know, with Redlining and everything, we couldn't get loans and things like that. But what I saw when we had middle class black neighborhoods, they ran highways through those neighborhoods just so that the, you know, non-blacks could get, you know, transportation through easier to the suburbs and stuff. So when we did have our own neighborhoods, they got destroyed by highways to get to the suburbs, where we couldn't really live.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And that's when the suburbs and the urban communities got created, is through redlining. Yeah, and that's exactly what it is.
You know, so and another one of those, you know, you touched on like retail businesses wouldn't even come into those neighborhoods, and you know, and of course, if we fast forward like now and we look at like retail businesses in those neighborhoods, I think Clayton, you just touched on this. If you look at the difference between some of those red line neighborhoods versus the more affluent, or what were those, Malcolm? The highest ones, the most desirable, was the green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was green. Yeah. So they broke it down in 4 different colors. The most desirable was green. The second one was blue. The third one was yellow, and the last one was red. Was redlining, which means no go. Do not loan to anybody living in that area. Right. Green is automatic. You will get finance. If you was blue, you was still pretty good, and yellow was kind of like cautionary there. Yeah. Kind of like credit scores at this point.
Yeah. Yep. So, and in those areas, you know, like if you go to like a green neighborhood versus a red zone, you know, you can see even in the caliber of stores that are there. Like, you know, you go to like red line neighborhoods, you know, you got your little corner stores and stuff like that where they're selling and advertising like your malt liquors, cigarettes and stuff like that. But then you go to a more affluent neighborhood, you got your Targets. I mean, how many predominantly black neighborhoods have you gone in and seen like a Target or Wegmans, Publix, you know, Lowe's Foods, you know, one of these more upscale grocery stores? I can't think of any either.
Chinese restaurants, beauty supply stores.
You might get a Walmart.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, Walmart's are everywhere. They're, you know, they're everywhere.
And you forgot about the ABC store too.
Oh yeah,
liquor stores, Chinese restaurants, beauty supply stores, fast food,
tobacco shops, you know, stuff like that.
Smoke shops.
Yeah. You know, so but when you think about it, and then people say, oh, well, that's what black people like to, you know, that's what they like to spend their money. I'm like, no, this is all they ever had available to them.
Yep.
So when you stick something in somebody's face and that's all they can get to, they're going to migrate to it. Yep. You know, so.
Look, I had some people at work laughing one time, like a while back. I said, you can always know where you're in the hood when you see City Trends and Church's Chicken.
Oh, yeah.
Right next to each other.
It's actually Church's Chicken over there by my job.
Yeah, you know, so, I mean, that's just like, you know, like I said, on the flip side of things, you go into some of these more affluent neighborhoods, like when I'm in a town here called Cary, here in North Carolina, you know, very affluent city, you know, for the most part.
They don't have a Church's Chicken.
No, I have never gone through Cary, you know, this particular city here in North Carolina. I've never seen a Church's Chicken. I doubt they have a City Trends. And I've never seen one. Most of the restaurants that I see here, these are more upscale. Even if they're like, you know, like a little bit more laid back. These are places where you go, you sit outside, you get you something to eat, you know, things like that. They're playing like little music. All the little teenagers and things like that hang out. You don't see no crackheads, nobody standing outside, you know, things like that. So, and that's not to judge anything, but you can tell the difference when you're in these different neighborhoods. And if you were to take that same, if you were to geographically take the area that you're in currently here in 2020 and use that empirical data from redlining, I guarantee you'll still be able to match up a lot of those red zones, you know, because as we've discovered, not much has changed.
Right. And I mean, I could speak on that because where I used to live at, Southeast Raleigh, I mean, seen a lot of signs going up saying like, yo, we buy your house for straight cash. I mean, I didn't have like, you know, the Publix or any of these like high upscale Harris Teeter or anything like that. I mean, I had like, you know, the Oak City Fish, Burger King, the liquor store, smoke shop and everything like that. The roads were bad, and
you had a police station.
And that was the one thing they did. They built a police station right beside my neighborhood.
Yeah, going back to the last episode, that's what police are designed to do.
Right,
police the black neighborhoods.
And I mean, I know we'll talk about this on another episode or the next episode or whatever. But I mean, it's just seeing the signs out there, and they're trying to push us out. And it's crazy, but yeah. So
I mean, and it's one of those where like it wasn't. Like Mozzie was just getting about to say, you know, it wasn't even like it was only just to keep us in those areas, but when they need that space, they know how to get us out. Because for years and years, you like, you know, I mean, the practice is with redlining. You can't get loans. And if you do get them, you get really high interest rates.
Really high interest rate, yeah.
I mean, and then try to sell your house or try to sell it, if you even own it, but try to sell a property in one of those zones. I mean, you get almost pennies on the dollar.
Oh, yeah.
It's devalued.
Then, you know, then all these so-called investors come in, and I say it, you know, white investors come in, they buy up the properties for pennies on the dollar, and then they turn them around after they move the minority population out, and they sell it for like almost 10,000% for what they bought it for.
Right.
You know, I'm talking about $100,000 houses going for 1.2 million.
Right. And I mean, luckily for me, like I had a phone call like when I was living in my old spot or whatever, and it was like, hey, we'll buy your house straight cash, you know, 120,000, we'll give you that. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So I mean, when we went through the proper steps to sell our home, we got more than what they were trying to offer.
Oh yeah, because that's the nature of the beast.
Right.
I'm gonna buy it low and I'm gonna sell it high.
Yeah.
And then like you drive around like Martin Luther King and all these other places, you see that they're tearing down all these like crack houses or whatever you want to call them. And I mean, they're upscaling and bringing in, you know, white people or just people that have money into those areas.
I was in downtown Durham today. Went to like 2 new houses that were, you know, built. I remember like that area. Like when I first moved to Durham, it looked nothing like how it looks now.
Right.
Especially during, was it Austin Avenue or whatever? Like when you're going past by Central?
Yeah, so I just got a text from my mother-in-law. She was asking. She said, wasn't Soul City near Henderson meant for black people?
Yeah.
And I think it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, and as we're still addressing some of that, you know, another point to bring up, you know, with redlining and in these neighborhoods where the numbers are just so staggeringly low.
Yep.
The property values are low. And then you have all these rich investors that come in and they buy up all these properties for like a fraction of what they're worth. Then they turn around and flip it. I got to make a plea. And I know I'm probably, you know, this is probably futile because I don't think nobody big is listening to us yet. Not yet, but we're going to speak into
listening.
it. You know, but my thing is this, you know, you have all these big black investors, you know, or investors of people of color. Why not come back in and buy the neighborhoods?
Well,
I mean, can I say something real quick?
Go for it, man.
My opinion on that is I feel like some people forget what they came from. I mean, not saying that's everybody, but, once you get there, like, you're not trying to go back.
Well, I didn't say move back. I'm not saying move back because I won't go back to where I came from.
I'm just saying, like, not saying move back, but
I don't think they forget where they come from. They just want to do better than where they came from.
Right,
they see the good life in the suburbs, so they move to the suburbs.
And another thing too, I mean, I think it's if I was in that position where I was a billionaire or whatever.
Heck, I live in the suburbs.
And right, and if I was expected to go to these neighborhoods and revitalize it, at the same time, if you're a billionaire, you're careful where you put your money. Yeah, I think they think like it's not profitable. It's just gonna put me in the red.
But and I understand what you're saying, but it shouldn't even be about the money. It should be about helping your brother and sister out, trying to uplift everybody. So
that's true, but when you got that amount of money, what benefit is it to yourself?
So when I say that, like, why not come back and buy it? I don't mean buy it up and give it away for free. I mean come back, invest in your own neighborhoods, like put businesses there. I don't care if it's your own business, put businesses in there that that you own or whatever, or come back in and buy up properties, right, and buy them and flip them, fix them up and flip them. I mean, but here's my thing. A point to what Mazio was saying. Now, you don't want to be like, you don't want to just come in and just do charitable work. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that some celebrity or some, billionaire should come in and just give away millions and millions of dollars, because I mean, that's just not practical, but what I am saying is at some point in time, in order for us to have some type of resources in our investment, people are going to have to, make tiny sacrifices. Billionaires make tiny sacrifices, and you may not make a return right away, because if we don't get some type of investment in our neighborhoods, because first of all, we know no one else is going to do it. Others aren't going to do it, and if they do, they're going to move the people out. So
it's possible, but it's gonna take a lot of cooperation. I think it's going to take a multitude of people with deep pockets to revitalize areas like that
and band together
and bring
here's the thing. We can't just we just can't hope that million and billionaires come to our community and invest in it. We have to do it ourselves.
That was gonna be my next point. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Like, we can't. I mean, we can hope and pray that maybe somebody would want to come in, but if you think about it, even with all the black millionaires and billionaires in the world, it's still not enough of them and enough GDP that they hold. Because when you really think about this whole entire nation and all the neighborhoods that can really stand to be revitalized, man, we're talking trillions of dollars. And as the black spending power, while it is in the trillions, but it's literally less than, I think when I calculated that number, because I looked it up, less than 400 billion of the 1 point something trillion and the black spending power returns back into our neighborhoods. But now, that sounds like a lot of money. Now spread that out to every black or minority populated city and area across this entire nation. That's not much. I mean, some areas get it a little bit more than others, but as a whole, that's not a lot.
But getting back to redlining, that $1 trillion could be a lot more if we didn't go through this redlining process.
Right. We had property.
We could have property if it wasn't through to this redlining process.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna read you a number. Black families lost $212,000 in wealth in the last 40 years because their homes was in a redlining community. $212,000 in wealth. Just because their homes was in redlining communities.
Wow. And I'm glad you said that, Malcolm, because that definitely segues us into our next point, which is, I want you, because you had some really interesting numbers that you schooled us on the other day about the differences in the average median wealth of black families versus white families.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and read those numbers to you again. The average white family has $900,000 in wealth. The average black family has $100,000 in wealth. That's almost 9 times more than what the black people have, that white people have. And the biggest reason is redlining. You can have the exact same property that somebody else have, but if you in a redline area, it's going to depreciate your house by hundreds of thousands of dollars, even though it's the exact same house, just because you live in that area.
Well, and another practice we heard of, and I think we talked about it before, that there were some instances where the same house, and I mean physically the same house, was to be appraised by a surveyor, and surveyor came, saw there was a black family selling the house. House was only appraised for like maybe 2 and some change. They thought that was low because they had already previously had this house appraised, and I think it was appraised at like almost $100 grand more, or like $80 grand more. So they knew something was up. Same surveyor, same surveying company, different person. They used a white family, their neighbors, in the same house with the appraiser. Literally appraised that same exact house for $100 grand more.
Yeah, it's still happening today. And a good real estate agent will tell you, take all your pictures off the wall, because they don't want people to devalue your house because you're black.
Yeah,
and a good real estate agent
that's
will
so
tell
sad,
you that.
bro. You have to go to that length just to get a fair deal.
So we know one of the major contributors to this number, as we just read off, is that the difference in the number, the wealth between white families and black families. And we know that is, of course, redlining was a major contributor to that, because we just don't have the same amount of wealth that those families have. Why? Because we weren't given the same opportunities as far as like lending, buying power, or even, stuff like interest rates. But another thing that also goes hand in hand with that was low, which we just touched on, was low, low land values. You talking about an acre in this area is only worth this amount, but the same acre in the same condition in a totally different part of the city was valued so much higher, simply just because of where it was. So that already takes away, you already lost money with your house. You also have a package with the land, so you're going to lose part of that. And then Malcolm also talked about a lot of these areas, you couldn't even get insurance.
Couldn't get insurance.
Couldn't get insurance, or most of the time you couldn't get loans. Like one bit of data that I got from 1934 to 1968. 98% of home loans were given to white families. So we got 2%.
2%.
2%.
Wow.
It's crazy, man.
And yet people say, and I'm going to call it out. People will say, well, black people were given the same opportunities we were. No, we weren't.
It wasn't.
Not even close, bro.
No, I'm sorry. And nobody's trying to say nobody's trying to play a victim here, but let's just be frank about the nation we live in. It's not, and people will say, well, slavery was XYZ, amount of years ago. I was like, you do know that was only like maybe 160 years ago?
And
maybe.
And it changed forms. It's still going on.
Exactly.
It changed forms.
Slavery didn't really end, and we know that. It was just transformed, and it evolved. Like I said in the previous episode, I said it evolved into different ways. Okay, so you outlaw this. Okay, but I can still do it this way.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I found, how they were saying, like, through redlining, that still, even though segregation was against the law at this point, but with redlining, that still kept schools segregated.
So, and another thing is, not only with the the fact that they couldn't get insurance, another thing that was happening that I read about and that I found very interesting was the fact that when they did get mortgage loans or even insurance and things like that, their rates was so much higher than the average, interest rate of, their white or whatever counterpart. And why we bring that up now, because, people are like, well, y'all are talking about something that happened 80 years ago. Let me school you on something. I used to be a branch manager for a bank. Now, I won't name the bank, but I can tell you this, that I saw it firsthand. And I'm talking about when I would run reports, and I was the branch manager, so when I saw, certain reports, I can see their buying power. If we're just going straight off of a calculator, I could see their buying power. I saw their debt to income ratio. I saw their credit score. And a lot of these black account holders had excellent credit. I'm talking about no debt, Their debt to income ratio was like literally below 20%, and that is awesome.
That is awesome.
And we're talking about an average household income of about $130,000 to $150,000 a year.
You would think you would be straight.
And they would come in and apply for business loans.
Yeah.
Small business loans. Denied.
So in the black community, it's easier for you to take out a $300,000 mortgage as opposed to getting $100,000 business loans.
Yeah.
They want to keep you in debt. They don't want you to move up and get paid.
Yeah. You can spend your money, you just can't make any money.
I'm gonna say one more thing, and even with student loans, black people used to get higher interest rates on student loans.
Wow.
That's one of the things that people didn't mention in redlining, but student loans was also part of it as well.
I had no idea.
Yeah, neither did I. I'm like, I thought that those were all pretty standard, across the board. But but then again, those are just federal subsidized loans. We're talking about private loans, and you're right.
Yep.
But
the federal government created redlining.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it was just another way, like I said, they could they can just transform the practice. So if you outlaw it in one way, as they did with the Fair Housing Act in 1968, but it was still transformed. And I'm going to just speak on this because I know it to be true. It has been proven. And people, like I said, once again, people will say, well, that was then, this is now. No, some of those lasting effects are, just think about, our current president, who is a real estate, so-called businessman. Donald Trump wouldn't rent to not only black residents in his buildings, but he wouldn't rent to black business owners in his commercial buildings through different practices. Now, if the Fair Housing Act was put into law back in 1968, how can you still be discriminatory?
Right.
Why? Because there's ways around it still.
Oh, yeah.
You can't, it's almost hard to prove.
Yeah, and going further in what you're saying, I was listening to Nicole Hannah-Jones, and she was saying that even though discrimination against housing is illegal, over 4 million incidents still happen every year to Black and Latino families when they're trying to get housing loans and things of that nature.
Right.
Yeah, it's still happening, man.
So so we're gonna just kind of transform just a little bit. We're still gonna talk about redlining, but one of the things that we did want to talk about as far as putting that wealth back in our properties, back in our neighborhoods. We do want to talk about the differences between renting and getting a mortgage. Because I do think in our neighborhoods, we're targeted.
Oh, yeah.
And we get trapped and sucked into renting, which means we're just making somebody else rich, no ownership.
Yep.
And they feed you all these different things in our neighborhoods, like, oh, well, you don't need to, you don't need to go and buy, you don't need to get a mortgage. Why get a mortgage? First of all you got to do is just have good renters history, so they let you rent.
So this is what I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna make it easy. Renting is like putting money into somebody else's pocket that they put in the bank to help them get rich. And owning your own house is like you putting money into a bank with a better return. So I think you should put your money into a bank so you can get a better return. So I think buying a house is definitely beneficial for anybody to create wealth.
Yeah.
And especially if you during tax time, the money that you put into your house, you'll definitely get something back for it. Anything that you own, it is always better than just outright paying someone else. So,
so for me personally, as a renter, I definitely see the pros and cons of it, but it's way more cons than there are pros. Because one of the things that I do every month when I make my rent payment, man, I feel like I just threw money in the toilet and I flushed it. Don't get me wrong. I'm thankful to have a place to stay because right now I'm still getting to that point where I'm ready to buy a house. But I do feel this sense of waste every month because I'm I'm putting money into rent. I don't own it. And then when I calculate how much I spend in rent a year, I'm like, dude, that's close to probably $15,000 to $16,000 a year in rent for a space that's a fraction of the size of a house that I would probably have like 3 times the space.
Yep.
And probably half, maybe not half, but maybe 60%. The mortgage would be 60%, maybe 70% of the rent that I'm paying. Yeah. So I would still be saving money and building wealth at the same time.
Yep. And the fact that you're not creating any equity into your home. So I'm gonna give y'all a little background. Me and my wife bought our first house in 2014. We paid $122,000 for that house. We sold that house in 2019. We sold it for $160,000. So we lived in the house for 4 years, and our house appreciated $38,000. That's a little over $9,000 a year in appreciation.
That's good.
And the only thing we did was live in that house. So I'm telling you, in order to create wealth, you need to own some kind of property. And like I said, it's easier for you to get a mortgage if you're black than a business loan. But if you own your own home and you got equity, you can use that equity in there to fund your own business. Right. It's easier for you to get an equity loan. The biggest thing with the bank is banks are not in loan, they're in risk management. They only going to loan you money if you are low risk. Exactly. So anytime you go in trying to get a business loan, the first thing they ask you, what kind of collateral do you have? Right. Yep. So if you have collateral such as property, lands, or anything, that's equity. So it's easier for you to get money if you have equity into your home.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying. Like, yeah, passing laws to block discriminatory, actions is great, but we got to have some action to actually go out and buy homes and start building wealth, so we can some of this stuff that even with the laws that still slide under the radar that we can kind of prevent. Yeah. Because we're in a position, to fight it, because we know in America everything is run by that dollar. Exactly. Not necessarily the policies and laws that are passed, because a lot of things you can get around with you got enough money.
Exactly.
Our old GM said money isn't everything, but it's right up there with oxygen. You have to have it.
You can't live without it.
Yeah, exactly. So and another one of those things that I see with that is it's kind of like a reversal on things. So I see this a lot, and I'm gonna say it because every time I see it, I get kind of annoyed. Now I rent. I'm a renter, so I'm not bashing anybody for renting or whatever. But we have to, as Malcolm was saying, if we want to build wealth, you have to invest in the means to build the wealth, which means get out there and get mortgages and things like that.
You should rent with a plan. Your plan and rent should have a plan.
So this is what I was going to bring up, because I see this a lot. I see people out here paying rent. They're renting because they always talk about, oh, I can't buy a house. But and I'm gonna say this because now I don't live in a bad neighborhood at all. I live in a nice neighborhood with nice apartments or whatever. But there's a guy that lives there and drives a Rolls Royce.
Wow.
In an apartment, and I'm like, dude, I don't care how nice your car is. The moment you drove it off the lot, it depreciated.
Yeah, you got.
So you're spending all this money. So apparently he has money. For whatever he does for a living, he has some decent income coming in, and I don't care if he bought a used Rolls Royce, you still gotta have money.
It's still a Rolls Royce.
Exactly. It costs way more than my little Chrysler, so but and I think about that, I was like, now I don't live in like luxury apartments, but I don't live in trashy apartments either.
We gotta stop standing on people, man.
I mean, I don't live somewhere where you should be. I'm not saying you shouldn't be, but like I think your priorities are upside down.
We put money into the wrong things. Like instead of saving or putting it towards a house that you can own, I mean, we put it into nice fancy cars or rims or
clothes.
Or just clothes or whatever. I said poles. My bad.
What's on his mind?
That's a big depreciation.
I'm about to snitch on you. I'm calling your wife right now. He ain't talking about
poles. That's a big depreciation.
My bad. I'm thinking about voting. That's all.
Yeah, yeah, nice cleanup. I see you over there, Mr. Clean, baby.
But yeah, I mean, we
I'm
put
with
money.
Mazio.
Thank you. But I mean, we put money into the wrong thing. I mean, when I was, delivering mail and I'll come across like people living in like trailers and they have like dang on charges or challenges and they have like the 20 to, and I'm over exaggerating, but 40-inch rims on their vehicle, but then like they have their windows all busted out, like the trailer looks like trash, or like bullet holes been all on it. So,
but that's how it is though. Like, even though you say you are exaggerating, but that's the way we see it. Clay and I go out to homes to do estimates sometimes, and we see it like the homes are not. And don't get me wrong, I'm not judging nobody's house, because I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still renting an apartment, and they have a house, and maybe they don't want to upgrade the house. Maybe they own that house, you know, that single wide or something like that. But I'm like, you got a single wide, but you got a Rolls Royce sitting out there in front of it, and the house is about 80 years old.
Well, I ain't gonna down somebody because the single wide. As long as they own the single wide and the property around it, that's still better than renting, in my opinion.
Any day.
And the reason why I'm talking about wealth, because wealth actually funds college funds, and that's the biggest thing. So if you have, you know, $300,000 in equity, that means you can send your kids to college free. So they won't have to get student loans and be paying for the rest of their life. So that's why I'm there. That's why I'm pushing black people, go out there and try to buy something, man.
Yeah.
Bro, that made me cringe so hard. I'm just saying, dude, got a Rolls Royce.
Don't get me wrong, it's pretty. It's like a midnight blue. I mean, it's beautiful, and I love driving by it every morning. But I mean, like the sight of the car, you know, I mean, I'm a guy. I like cars. It's a pretty car, but then I think about it, I'm like, dude, for what you're paying and what you're investing in this depreciated machine, you could have put that same amount of money into a house. And not saying that he couldn't have the Rolls Royce, because you could have did both. Obviously he's making decent money. Yeah. You know, and I don't want to put down black people, because I love to uplift us. And sometimes our way of uplifting is pointing out some of those things, those areas of opportunity. Yeah. And I do feel like sometimes in our communities, not everybody, but some of us, we would rather look good than do good. And excuse my grammar, you know, but we would rather look like we're doing well than to actually do well.
And I feel like this will probably go into another episode or something. We're dealing with like self-esteem, but I feel like the reason why we do that is because we're trying to stunt. We're trying to make people like, you know, say, oh damn, man, I wish I had that. I wish I had.
Keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, and we want people to look at us and say, oh, they're doing good, but really deep down inside, we're not. But like I said, that's another topic or whatever. But I mean, my only thing I'll say is invest in something that will help you grow, that'll help better you in the future or whatever. Don't look at the short-term goals just saying like, I got this car and that's all I'm worried about. And I mean, like Malcolm said, I'm not talking like bad or down to anybody that has like a trailer or anything like that. As long as you own it, that's all that matters. I mean, we got to own as much as we can. I mean, not, you know, sit up here and just rent out and, you know, don't settle for less.
And that's one thing that I do not miss about selling cars, man, because I saw it so many times, man. One case that sticks out to me the most is this guy. He's a little younger than me. He was like in his like mid-20s or early 20s or whatever. He called. It was I was in the office taking calls and doing like credit applications over the phone or whatever. He called in and he was saying that he needed a car. So I said, cool, I'm helping him out. He said he wanted a Charger or Mustang. He wanted a muscle car. I said, okay, cool, man. Let's see, you know, what we need to do to get you this muscle car. And then as we get deeper, he had just had a repo. He was telling me that his girlfriend takes him to work every day. And I told him what it takes to get the Mustang. He had to put, you know, quite a bit of money down. It was going to be high interest rate. And I told him, you know, at the time it was probably like maybe 2015 or 16. I told him I could sell him like, you know, 3-year-old like Malibu, and it would have a whole lot lower interest rate and a whole lot lower monthly payment than the car that he wanted, and that would help him build his credit back up and not have to rely on his girlfriend taking him to work every day. He was like, no, if I can't get a Mustang, I can't get a Charger or some kind of muscle car, I don't want it. I'm like, bro, you told me your girlfriend's taking you to work,
but
right?
But walking to work. Get out of here.
So, and like, our priorities are just so out of line, bro.
And the one thing you just said, the key word is credit, because credit is just as important as cash and having and the money as well. Because I mean, if we don't have good credit, like a lot of people not going to look at it.
Well, it gives you the ability.
It gives you leverage.
Yeah, because you can have bad credit, but if you have the equity, you still have a foot in the game. I'm not saying that credit's not important, because a person who, and I don't mind saying this on air, this is a person who came from, matter of fact, when my homeboy here sold me my first brand new car.
Yeah, that was me, bit down.
Malcolm, I called Malcolm in a panic, like, hey, bro, I need a car. My credit was shot. So I had to take what I can take. But I start that day when I went to Malcolm, my credit score was 438. And the fact that my homie ran my report,
miracles that day,
he did, bro. Because I'm telling you, that credit score was low. But another thing was, it was embarrassing to, for my homeboy to have to even pull all these levers to get me a car, because my credit wasn't where it needed to be, and my credit wasn't where it needed to be because I just hadn't really cared about it at that point. Right. Yeah. So Mazio made a great point that we gotta get our credit in line, and sometimes that means sacrificing a little bit sometimes. And I'm going to tie this back into the episode's title, Redlining, because we're going to move into our final segment here, and that's how to overcome it. And one way to overcome, all right, first of all, we were dealt a sorry hand, but it's up to us now at this point to overcome it. And one of those things to overcome it, as Michael said, is credit, because credit gives us leverage, and it gives us a foot in the game, and it gives us, it basically gives us a hand to play.
Well, I will say this: credit is very, very important. But if you have $1 million cash in your hand, equities, land, whatever, you're gonna be able to do a lot of more money than having a 740 credit score and only making $30,000 a year. There's a lot of that stuff is factored in. You can have perfect credit, but if you don't make a lot of money, the bank still will not,
because you're still a risk. Because you're trustworthy, but we just don't think you can afford it.
And then on top of that, credit is definitely important. But through this research that we've been doing on Redlining, we know that you could have the same credit as someone else and still be denied a loan. So again, going back to it, that US dollar, the cash is always king. So you definitely need to have that money too. And my thing, just to answer what Vincent's question was, how to overcome what's stacked against us, is, as I always say, is knowledge. Because just like I said, dealing with our people and with car loans and stuff, it's crazy how I would deal with people who were older than me in their 40s and 50s, and they did not know how it works, and we value the wrong thing. I had a lady who made $130,000 a year, and she worked at a college. I'm not even gonna say the college, but she worked at a college. She had degrees, but her credit was terrible. But she only wanted a BMW, and where I could have sold her something with a better interest rate, but she wanted what she wanted. And you made all that money, but your credit is that terrible. We need to be, for us in our generation, with our kids coming up, we need to really sit down with them and tell them about credit, tell them about interest rates, tell them about equity, building equity in the home, because a lot of us, our ages and younger, we just don't know. So I think credit and all that's important, but we got to start with the knowledge of how the U.S. systems like this work. That's where we start.
And that's why I mentioned credit, because I know money is just is more important or whatever. But my thing is, it's good for us to have a plan A, plan B, plan C. But the way some of us, our logic is, we're only thinking about plan A.
Indeed.
And if plan A doesn't work, then then you're like,
I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, I'm just going to give up. But we need to have, even if you have to go to plan Z, as long as you have a backup plan. If I don't have the money, $1 million to get this house, let me at least have my credit right.
Yeah, and that's not what I was saying.
Oh, no.
I was just saying credit is important, but
it's not the end all.
It's not the end all. That's what I'm saying.
I understand.
Just because you ain't got good credit doesn't mean you can't go out there and buy a house.
Right,
you can buy a house with bad credit,
but with good wealth.
Right, and there's other things. They got programs and stuff like that can help lower income people. USDA loans. They got a whole bunch of loans out there that we have to take advantage of as people. But I will say this: it's good credit and bad credit. The only thing that you should have on your credit report is a house and student loans. That's it. Everything else is considered bad. Like a car loan is considered bad. But most people don't have $30,000 to put on a car. So, but credit cards are not good things to have on credits.
Oh, so you say good debt and bad debt?
Good debt and bad debt. All right. There's only two good debts, and that's house, mortgage, and student loans. Car loans are considered bad debt. So what I'm telling you is that be conscious about your credit and only have those good those good debts on your credit report.
Do it responsibly.
You're right,
man. Because I can tell you, I'm a person who sits here with bad debt. That's credit card. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's necessary sometimes.
Sometimes,
yeah, you know. But like you were saying, like you have to do it in an intelligent manner.
Right.
Right. Don't go and get just because you got $50,000 in open credit. Don't mean you should go and use it.
Don't go.
Unless you absolutely have to, like an emergency, something happens.
Exactly.
So
and that's
and speaking to that, man, I haven't really dug into it, but I was listening to. It was a financial podcast, and it was talking about leveraging your credit. So if you got that $50,000 in credit, leverage it to something else that's going to make you money, so that you can pay that $50,000 back, but also make a profit from it as well. So that goes back to gathering that knowledge to effectively navigate, the world and the systems that are already stacked against us. If, like I said, again, knowledge is key, bro. You can navigate around it, but you got to be smart about it and stop valuing bullshit that's not gonna matter tomorrow.
Exactly. So one thing, and to answer the question, some ways to overcome those lingering effects of redlining. I absolutely agree with you, Clayton. Like, knowledge is key with this, because if we don't get that knowledge on what happened and how it happened, we won't know how to stop it from happening again to us. So, and there are ways for us to do it. The problem is, and we just touched on, is that people have their priorities all screwed up. Like I said, we'd rather look good than do good. Right. So, because I want to impress the next person, or I got to be flashy. And there's nothing wrong with material things, because I like nice things just as much as the next person. But we can't let those things overtake our minds to the point where it's like we're not even thinking about our future, or we're not thinking about wealth management and wealth building and things like that. We don't even think about our kids, and I say we as a people. I'm not saying me, because I'm the opposite. I like nice things, and don't get me wrong, there's things out there I want to go and buy right now, but I won't, because if I really look at my financial situation, it doesn't call for buying certain things right now until I get myself to that next level of financial stability. Then I can buy these things, but I'm not going to go out there and buy something that pretty much is going to cost me money, not make me money.
You talking about the PS5? I know, man.
and that too. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't really care about a PS5, but you have a lot of people
who just a PlayStation hater. You're an Xbox player.
But but what you saying? I would blame media. I mean, media shows like us having cars and everything like that. So we look at that and say, that's what we need.
But we take the responsibility away from grown people.
And media plays a big role in it. But I think a more prevalent factor is like your parents and the people that you're around. They just don't know. They don't tell the younger generation. That's how it's been. And so it's up to us, people our age and younger, to change the narrative and again, share the knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. And then there was one thing that I didn't go over or even mention, but I'm gonna just go over real quick some facts. But I was looking some stuff up, and it was talking about back in the 30s, it's the 10 U.S. cities with the highest percentages of neighborhoods that they marked as hazardous. I'm not going to go over all town, just go over the top 3. But Macon, Georgia was 64.99%. Birmingham, Alabama was 63.91%. And Wichita, Kansas was 63.87%.
And if you think about it, heavily minority populated.
Yo, when you said Wichita, man, that reminded me of this guy when I worked at CarMax, bro. This really doesn't have it's not bringing anything to the table, but y'all need to know this. He said he went to Kansas and he was like damn, I didn't know slavery still exists. I'm like, bro, why are you telling me this, man?
Right.
But him saying that, it really sheds light on what you're saying there, bro.
Yeah, and I mean, it was back to what we were saying earlier. You can go to different areas in every state, because this happened in every state. The big cities like Atlanta, Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, they were all hit by this. And then you could even see it today. Especially talking about Baltimore. The last time I went there,
even was in Raleigh and Durham. And
there you go. Right.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. It's sad. So, we definitely got to get it together. Be smart, have backup plans. Like you said, make sure you invest in something that will support you and better you in the future. Don't just look at the short term goal. Make sure you have a long term goal.
Yeah, play the long game always.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, man, my biggest takeaway from this episode, man, and just really, as we know, really lay out some of those things. Because like I said, I knew about redlining, but I wasn't really up on like the term of it. Right. But just doing the research really like opened my eyes to a lot of different things, and I really think some of the major ways to overcome this, man, is knowledge,
yeah.
and knowing what resources are out there and get your priorities straight. Because I think if we can go out there and get that knowledge, get our priorities straight, man, as a community, as a people, and I'm not even talking about just blacks, but just minorities in general, we can really dig ourselves out of this hole that was dug for us, because we didn't dig it for us, but we can really dig ourselves out of it. We can start to bring wealth and opportunities back into our communities, exactly. But we have to do it ourselves. We can't wait on others. And I'm sorry, I mean, like I said, I brought up that point earlier, but we can't even wait for the elite to do it for us. It's not their responsibility. We can't put that on and try to make them feel guilty, like, oh, you should do this. No, it's up to us to dig ourselves out. But we've got to be willing to do it.
And one thing I'll warn brothers and sisters, when you go research things like this, it's going to be very disheartening that the practices that went on and go on, like it'll make you sad, but it's up to us to like change that and like fight back against it, because like I said, it's very saddening to see like how we were treated and still treated to this day. But you need to know it so that it'll really affect you and make you want to make a difference. Right.
Yep. And I mean, a lot of people might think like they don't have that much. I mean, like have value, but everyone has worth. And I mean, make sure, like going back to previous episodes, like Malcolm said, like voting. I mean, make sure that you learn everything that you can. I mean, always just have a backup plan. I guess that's anything I want to say. So.
Yeah, and I'll say one last thing, and I know I'm hogging the mic right now, but but yeah, man, just after doing all this research and everything, like voting is important. But what the conclusion that I came to just this week, just like doing further research in Redline, because I heard of it before, but I never really looked at it. Voting is definitely an important first step, but it goes beyond that, because we have to take some action behind it. Because as we see, when laws are passed, that doesn't necessarily change the whole situation. It's up to us to take action to make the overall picture change. And it does start with voting. That's an important piece of it, but that's not where it ends.
Right. And I guess I know we, to add on to that, like I definitely agree with you. And even when we vote, like we shouldn't stop there. We got to keep pushing. I mean, it's not like for example, you playing basketball, you shoot a 3 and then you like up by 3 points and say, okay, I can rest.
Right.
We always got to be on our A game at all times.
Yeah. Hey, who did that? Was that your boy from the Seahawks? He was going in for the touchdown and he started like jogging and got the ball knocked out.
DK Metcalf.
Yeah, Metcalf. Don't DK Metcalf your life. Right. Run hard till you hit the end zone,
until
bro.
you get to where you want to get to.
Yeah.
Let the football be in your guts.
So the last thing that I want to say, and I hope that people learn from this, in order to create wealth, we need to go out there and get some land, buy a home. Don't ever think that you can't buy a house, because they got special programs for this. Whether it's a $300,000 house, whether it's a $100,000 house, or even a trailer with some property on it, you own it. Go out there and do it. And then you got collateral, you got standing. And once you have standing, you can do a lot of things.
Absolutely. Well, guys, as we bring this to a close, man, I hope everyone enjoyed the episode. I hope you got something out of it. But most of all, we really hope that it opened your eyes to a forgotten practice that, while it was forgotten by name, it's still very much in effect today. We're still feeling the effects in our neighborhoods and in this nation. And of course, as a people, economically, we are still struggling to pull ourselves out of it. So, I mean, I hope everybody got something out of this. And like all the guys said, man, go out there, do your research, get knowledge, build wealth, and bring stuff back to not only yourself, but back to your community and to your neighborhood. So, until next time, guys, we'll see you next Tuesday. Peace. All right. That was good.
Yeah.